Today on the podcast, I have Kevin Tumlinson. Kevin, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me, Kevin.
Well, tell us a bit about your writing. Was literature always a big part of your life?
I tell this somewhat apocryphal story about how I wrote my first book when I was 5 years old. And it was on the big, I don't know if they had these in Canada, but the big chief notepads that they used to teach you how to write. Do you remember those?
I think
It's
so.
like big spaced, triple spaced lines. And, I had that big fat, practice pencil that they give you when they're teaching you how to write. And I wrote a story, my book, and I taped the whole thing together, stapled the edges, taped it with a nice, masking tape binding, and drew a cover for it. So I've been self-publishing for a really long time.
Amazing, amazing. Is that something you pursued in school?
Yeah, well, I did actually. Early days, I was like a contributing writer for the school paper, and I excelled at writing papers. Although I often got bad grades on my papers because I wouldn't do the actual assignment. So, I remember one time in particular, the assignment was to write about a true event that happened to us, and that we thought was fun or exciting, and I didn't have anything. And so I wrote about my grandfather and I encountering evidence that Bigfoot might have visited our campsite while we were away hunting. And I filled it out with all the details I could think of that might indicate that was happening. Didn't encounter the actual Bigfoot in the story. We just see large footprints. And everyone was blown away by that. And somebody asked me, "Did that really happen?" And I was honest and said no, and I failed the assignment. But I learned a lot.
Did you go on to post-secondary education? Did the marks eventually turn your way, or were you
Yeah,
always a poor student
no,
thinking
no,
on your own and
I was always pretty good at it. I mean, when it came to writing, I excelled, and people saw that, and so I got involved with the school paper in high school, and I started writing a column for the local newspaper. I was doing like a teen beat thing for our local paper, so I had like a little weekly column, made $10 a column, and
whoa,
in
whoa, hold on,
college,
hold on. At
I
what age
know.
was this?
This would have been like 12 to 13. Throughout most of junior high and high school,
So
I
you've been a
did that.
paid professional
Yeah,
author since
yeah,
junior high. This is
yeah,
nothing new
yeah.
to you.
Rolling in it, man. That was better than lunch money. So yeah, no, I making money as a writer was always something I did. Not as
Was
much these days. I probably make less these days than I did in high school. But
was that invested in comic books or what did, teen writer Kevin,
you
put
know,
his money into?
I grew up in a very rural
Mm.
area of Texas, and there weren't places to spend your money. There was no place for me to just randomly go spend my money. So that money accumulated for a while, and until a gas station opened up nearby that had video games, and then all that money became quarters, and all those quarters became hours and hours of playing Kung Fu or a game that was likely called Kung Fu or something similar at the local gas station.
At what point did you realize, being a novelist might be a possibility for you? Were you writing novels, yeah, as early as high school,
Yeah.
or was that more of something once
I
you
mean,
became?
I did do a lot of short stories, and I had a lot of what I call my thirds, which were like the first third of a book. That I would start something. I'd have an idea. I'm going to write a book, and then in college, I did the same sort of thing. Did a lot of fiction writing, won some awards, and did a lot of that. Took some creative writing classes in college that did well. I had written novels, and I wrote two or three, and one of them actually got a publishing deal. But it turned out to be kind of a I got a bad deal. I didn't have an agent at the time. Um, Bad contract, and I ended up buying it out. They had paid me in advance on that book, and I ended up buying it back. And but I lost the rights to publish it for several years. So I really thought my career was over at that point. But in 2006, I discovered self-publishing as we know it now, the industry as we know it now. It was just sort of in its adolescent, and not even adolescent. This is preteen years, uh, and Amazon came along with something. I don't think it was called Kindle at the time. I discovered CreateSpace. I discovered Smashwords, and so I started, pulling together the stuff I had. I wrote a couple of books and published them that way, and that sort of launched my career. And been doing that ever since. But these days, I'm actually back to having some traditional deals. So it's kind of come full circle.
Well, that initial deal that went so poorly, it sounds like, I think for a lot of people, that might have been the end of it for them right there.
I
They
thought it
would,
was.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, what kept you going? I mean, how did you not just pack it all in and say, this isn't for me?
I am, for some reason, incapable of not writing. Even in my worst periods, I actually suffered a severe burnout in 2023 that derailed me for a bit and has continued to plague me. It's changed the timbre of my career, and I'm not publishing as often as I was um, because of that. I've learned a few things because of that, but I've just never been able to stop the writing, though. Whether I'm publishing or not, whether I'm making money or not, has never been the issue for me. I write. That's what I do. It's who I am. It's not something I'm probably ever going to stop unless, I just physically can't do it anymore. But yeah, it's a big part. I wouldn't even I don't necessarily think of it as my identity. I guess I sometimes do treat it like it's my identity, but it's my sort of spiritual gift. I'm a practicing Christian, so I believe God, lays out a road for you, lets you pick, which direction you're going to go on that road, but has a path picked out for you. Mine has always involved storytelling, crafting good stories that I hope are hopeful, that touch hearts and nourish souls. That's the whole point of me.
You mentioned that 2023 burnout. What did that look like for you? Did you see it coming, or was it something that caught you off guard?
It was kind of a holdover from the events of 2020 and the pandemic. My wife and I, by sheer coincidence, we sold our first house and got on the road in a van. And we were getting on the road. I handed the keys to an apartment that we rented temporarily back to the apartments on the day that they announced that everybody should lock down. And so we were homeless, except for the camper. And so we ended up staying with her folks for a bit. But during 2020, once we were in the van, at some point, at that time I was the director of marketing for Draft to Digital, and we decided we were going to do, because authors weren't getting to go to conferences or anything like that. We wanted them to be able to still have a way to learn about the industry and connect with other authors. And so we started doing a live stream. We did a live stream every single day for 3 months. And I'm on the road having to find Wi-Fi every day that's stable, and I'm hosting that show, and that was kind of some pressure. I had my own show that ended up putting on hiatus because I just needed to find some breathing room. And then, I had to continue writing and publishing at the same time and continue doing my marketing work for Draft Digital and continue all the things. And so I just had more and more pressure piled on me, and I kept that pace for 3 years. We eventually stopped doing the show daily, but we added it as a weekly thing. And my duties and responsibilities kept, multiplying. So for the next 3 years, I was just overwhelmed. And so there finally just came a breaking point, because I was involved in that whole rapid release strategy for writers. Write as many books as you can, as quickly as you can. I've done some epic things. I have a book called Evergreen that I actually wrote in a single day while I was stuck in a snowstorm over a Thanksgiving break in Manhattan, and uh, that I'll never repeat that experience. But that level of pushing myself was something I did regularly. So it's not a surprise that I eventually burnt out, you know. I needed to take a break. And though I can't stop the writing, I can stop the sort of the pace of publishing. And so that's kind of what I did. And it's had its impact, you know. There's been some positives and some negatives, but overall, I feel like I'm healing from that experience.
It's interesting. Everyone responded to 2020 their own way, and it sounds like you really doubled down on work. Meanwhile, I was carving spears. I was like, this is the end.
Yeah.
Electricity's going down any day now. I
Yeah.
gotta go catch me some deer or something so I can feed my family. But
Yeah.
you went the other way and started doing daily live streams.
Yeah, in hindsight, maybe I would have been better off making spears. So,
Well, you mentioned transitioning from, say, that rapid release schedule to something perhaps more sustainable, maybe, and that there's been
yeah.
benefits and drawbacks. I'd love to hear a little bit about, both benefits and drawbacks.
There's been a change, a lot of changes in the way my workflow, my work gets done. You know, I am back to daily writing, which is always, it's just always been part of me. There's been, you know, I've written two or three books in the past couple of years that are more for the traditional side of things. So I might have to kind of loop back and do a self-published book soon, just to kind of keep the coffers filled. But what I've noticed is one thing that came out of this, one big change for me, uh, you know, now that I'm changing my pacing, I'm also changing the effectively the kind of writing that I was doing because I did a lot of thrillers. I did archaeological thrillers were kind of my mainstay, action adventure books, right? And nothing at all wrong with those, but the stuff I'm writing now, I'd actually say it's leaning a little more literary, and it's coming from a different place in my soul. And I started doing something recently that I'm really enjoying and didn't think was going to be possible for me at first, but I got it in my head to start handwriting a book. And I've tried this 100 times over the years, and just, you know, the hang up for me was I didn't want to have to handwrite it and then, you know, have to prop it up somewhere and retype it. And, you know, it seemed like a big pain. And I wasn't going to do that. And I'm a very fast typist, so it just never made sense. But AI changed the game for me
Mhm.
on that because I discovered I could handwrite it, photograph it, put it in like ChatGPT, and it would transcribe it for me. And so I've now written about, you know, the first third of a book entirely by hand over the past couple of weeks. That is so very different from the rest of my work. And what I'm finding is slowing down to write it by hand has allowed me to express a different part of myself on the page. And so I'm taking my time, whereas before I was all about rapid release. AI came along and made rapid release pointless, you know, because when I left Draft to Digital, you know, there were people uploading like 1,000 plus books a day. Um, they were garbage. They were never going to get published. They, you know, they couldn't pass the quality assurance checks. But, you know, I can't compete with that. So I'm not going to. I'm going to go the other route. I'm embracing what I call the analog rebellion. You know, I'm slowing my pace. I'm writing by hand. I'm being more thoughtful about the work. And as a result, I'm doing very different work.
So it's interesting you both have found advantages to AI in terms of using the transcription abilities of it, but I've also seen the horrors of it in terms of a
Yeah.
thousand books uploaded in a day of trash. So where do you land on the kind of the both the benefits and the drawbacks of this emerging technology that's just, transforming everything?
Yeah, I think I've created a lot of content around this idea, but recently, but you know, the big people treat AI. A lot of people in our business treat AI as the big bugbear. It's the boogeyman. It's going to steal the work from us. You know, I had this epiphany that one of the biggest reasons that AI can generate stories, and it's getting better at this, by the way, but one of the reasons that AI can generate work that, you know, kind of feels like it might endanger us as writers or creators is because our work has become very formulaic and easy to replicate.
Mm.
And so If we truly want to continue this, be real writers, I think it's time for us to embrace thinking outside the formulas and thinking outside the box a little, and embracing the more human side of ourselves. Because I've read short stories and things and articles from AI that I've thought that's pretty good copy. Like I have a copywriter background. I can recognize decent copy. It does a good job with that, but it's lacking that piece, and it's ineffable. It's hard to pinpoint what it is without sounding like you're losing your mind. But when I read a piece when I read anything written by a human author that really has the skill, that really has the soul, you feel it. And I have not had that experience, even with the AI work that people will say, this is profound. It's so, it feels alive. I've read that stuff and I'm like, I could tell you blindfold that I could either tell you that this is AI or this is a writer who doesn't yet know what they're doing. And so I think that's yeah, I'm probably not quite answering the question you actually asked me, but for me, AI isn't a threat. It's a tool, and I'm able to use it to enhance what I do without doing the work for me. I use AI for things like, I scan my handwriting to transcribe it. I do this thing called looping where I copy and paste that into Scrivener, rewrite it in Scrivener, and then paste it back into ChatGPT and say, find the typos. And then I will also use AI to say, what do you think is happening next? What's the thing you think is going to happen next? And it'll tell me what it thinks logically is going to happen next. And then I'll go do the exact opposite. So, so I love using my enemy's strengths against them.
Well, we've talked about, dealing with burnout and recovering from that. We've talked
Yeah.
about, digital tools, whether it's, kind of being on the cutting edge of self-publishing in 2006 with Smashwords, or whether working for Drafted Digital or using AI to transcribe. Am I anywhere close in guessing that your interest in working with assistants, human assistants, might have somewhere come out of this idea of both burnout, but also acknowledging that we could all use
Yeah.
some tools and help along the way?
Yeah, yeah. So the author anchor, and thank you for looping us back around to the topic of today's episode. But author anchor was founded by the guys from Bookbrush, who are wonderful people. I befriended them at a Nink conference several years ago, like maybe 2017 or so. And I actually kind of advised them on rebranding their company. At the time, they were calling that their business coversellbooks.com. And I said, "So you guys make book covers?" And they're like, "Yeah, no, we don't do that. We do help them create marketing materials and things like that." So I'm like, okay, that's great. You got to change the name of your company. So they came up with some ideas. They asked me some questions, and I kind of helped shape that. Well, when this thing came along, Author Anchor, they had this idea that a lot of authors say that all they want to do is write. They don't want to have to do the marketing. They don't want to have to do all the drudgery work of publishing. So what these guys had was a whole business built around using virtual assistants from the Philippines to build their business. They built Bookbrush using these resources, these people, and so and they kind of perfected a way to find high quality workers, people who were good people to work with, and so they thought, well, there's no real model, by the way, for done for you marketing that is profitable for anybody. I've seen people try over and over again. I've been in this business for a long time, a long, long time. And I've seen small, like boutique marketing agencies come and go. Uh, they always run into the same problem. First, authors, don't always have much money. So they don't have the extra money to throw at someone to do the marketing for them on top of the spend it's going to take. So you could hire someone to run your Facebook ads, but you still have to pay for those Facebook ads. So now you're adding a layer of expense. So they don't always have that. And it's also just, it's not a one size fits all kind of thing. So in order to make it profitable, the only real model that works is to train someone who becomes the marketing team for you. And that's effectively where Author Anchor started. So you could bring on a VA who is located in the Philippines, and we have a sort of an admin fee, and then there's a minimum hourly rate for these workers. It ends up being about 750 an hour for you to hire someone, and they're trained to do the things that authors in our line of the industry. They're trained to do the things that we need, and they're trained to communicate well. They We have standards that they have to meet, in terms of oral and written communication. So it became this thing where it's like they already had this resource, they were already relying on it. They opened it up for authors to be able to use it as well. So it's very handy, and it does help with, burnout and overload. And, when I can hand things off to somebody instead of me having to do it, then the writing becomes the only thing I have to worry about. And that's the point.
In the entrepreneurial world, the idea of a Filipino VA is like, of course, we've been doing that for 20 years. But I
Yeah.
think in the author world, there's probably people listening to this right now going, what is a VA? Why the Philippines? What the
Yeah.
heck is going on here? So if we could take a step back for like the
Yeah.
authors out there who are, they're like, I've been trying to figure out Scrivener. What on earth are you guys talking about? What's the
Yeah.
simple introduction to this
By the
idea
way,
of a virtual assistant?
I've been using Scrivener since like 2006, and I probably only use like 1% of it. So don't feel bad. Um, okay. VA, mean, that stands for virtual assistant. I've had a lot of people ask me, does that mean it's AI? It's not, it's human beings. Why the Philippines? Because in the Philippines, the cost of living is incredibly low. It's for example, my VA, the like $5 an hour that she gets for the work, because that's the cut, that's the minimum that you have to pay the worker, is enough for her to, attend graduate school. She had an apartment she was co-renting with somebody. Uh, she had money that her family never really had before. And by the way, these minimums, that's just the minimum. You can pay your VAs more. I recommend you do when you find someone who's really good. It helps, helps them, helps you. And the goal here is not for you to say, how do I afford a VA right now? That's not the right question. The right question is, will hiring a VA help me increase my revenue potential? So we can talk about that in a bit. But in general, the reason the VAs in the Philippines work out so well is because they've got plenty of time and very low cost of living. And so, and they are usually willing to work at like all kinds of unreasonable hours. I actually told my VA that I want you to sleep and I want you to work a normal day for you. We can offset our time using Slack or something. You do not have to be awake at because we're effectively in opposite hours. My morning is her evening, and so forth. And so, or close to it. And so it's like a 15-hour difference. So I tell her, look, I don't want you working at 2 a.m. It's fine if you come at this later. Nothing I do is so crucial. It must be done like right this second. I'll leave you a message. So, but they're also just generally, they're good people and good workers. They want this. This is opportunity for them, and they come to us, and we train them on all the things that authors have heard of and know that they need. You can find somebody who knows how to run Facebook ads, or knows how to set up a Shopify store, or run a Kickstarter, or if you want someone who can do your formatting, you can find someone who can use Vellum, for example. And you're going to have to supply the software that they use in some of those cases. If you want them to use Vellum, you're going to need to, give them a license for Vellum. But a lot of them come kind of preloaded with some resources and things that you can leverage that they have, you know. Maybe they're good at video editing and they have their own video editing software or they, you know, whatever. So you would want to go in doing a discovery call with us to say, here's all the things that I have to do that I hate doing and I would like to never do again. And we'll try to match you up with somebody who has the skills you need.
And where do people go to book that kind of call?
If you go to authoranchor.com, first of all, you can scroll down the page a little, and there is an incredibly handsome man on the website.
Is he named
Um,
Kevin?
his name is
I
Kevin.
like him already.
It's a coincidence, I think, but he's very good looking. He will not be the one you talk to when you do your free discovery call. Uh, but if you there's a big button there that says book a free discovery call. There's not going to be any kind of obligations or anything. You're not signing any contracts. In fact, you never sign any contracts. The only thing you're ever obligated to is if you bring someone on and they do the work for you, you're obligated to pay them. We don't get a cut of their money at all, by the way. We don't make anything off of the VAs themselves. We only make the $99 a month admin fee, and we charge that per VA. So, but you can have as many VAs as you need for your business. You can even do, since there's no contracts, if you're trying to do a kind of one-off project, you could bring someone on who has the skills you need for just that project. So if you need somebody to set up a Kickstarter campaign for you, you could find someone who has that skill and bring them on, pay them for the work, and then, you know, you don't have to continue using them. But I think every all authors once you are making money with your work, this is that part I was talking about earlier. You should not have to figure out how to pay for this. This should be something that you're doing in order to increase your revenue potential. Meaning, if only I did not have to spend my time formatting books or doing the marketing or doing all these things, I could write more books, which would make me more money. Then I'm willing to pay 750 an hour for somebody in order to take that weight off my shoulders, and that will make me more money. That's when you want to bring on a VA. Just in case anybody was wondering.
Is there a clear list of things that are appropriate to ask for and a list of things that aren't appropriate to ask for? Or do you negotiate that with your own VA? What does that look like?
Yeah, you would probably figure that out with your VA. You know, physical tasks are going to pretty much be off the table. You couldn't ask them to pick up your dry cleaning, for example, or whatever. But you could say, you could bring someone on who manages your calendar. I do a lot of interviews. I haven't handed this off yet, but I could easily hand off like, booking the interviews on my behalf and, making sure my schedule's up to date, going out and finding new interviews for me. I could do that. And that's actually kind of in the realm of a marketing and PR activity. So perfectly acceptable. Um, no, really, if it's something that can be done digitally, from someone's desktop, it's pretty much on the table as long as it's legal, you know. Um, Websites, things like that, editing your videos, maybe updating your social media and YouTube channels and things like that. It's all on the table. And I would encourage you to, if there are things, I actually tell people you should go into the call with two lists. One is that first list of, here's all the stuff I do not want to do, but I must do, and I would rather someone else do it. That's your primary list. You should also go in with a list of things that you know you need to do that so far you haven't been able to do. Maybe you don't have the skill set for it or the time, and you would just rather pay someone to do it. Um, and when you talk to whoever's on the other side of that line, a lot of times it's Moesha. She's kind of the maven. She takes care of everything. She was a VA that is now full time with Author Anchor and kind of oversees all those operations. But whoever you end up talking to, you take those two lists and they will go and find you usually two or three candidates that you can interview. and then you can pick somebody if you like and get started. And then you're under no obligation. So if it comes around, if you didn't like any of those three, you can say, "Hey, can I try three more people or whatever?" Or if you try someone out and they're just not working out, you can bring someone else in. You can have them find someone else for you, or just cancel the whole thing. I mean, that's on the table too. But I have tons of tips, by the way, for how you should work with the VAs. It's a little in depth, but we have stuff on like our YouTube channel and things that you might find useful for that. I'm always happy to talk about that, but time is a factor. I don't want to soak up too much of your time.
Well, I was about to ask you, like, I know you're a podcaster as
Yeah.
well. This is probably the most terrible question I could possibly ask as someone trying to provide infotainment here. But for my own purposes, I'm curious, are there tax implications involved in hiring a
Yeah, it's a good
VA?
question. No. So the way you're going to need to ask them for specifics on this. I've asked before, but you're not hiring somebody. This is a contractor. It's a little bit like if you were to hire somebody to paint your house, you wouldn't be on the hook for taxes or reporting for that person. So, they're subject to whatever taxes apply where they're from, but you are not subject to, paying taxes on their behalf or reporting that. Now, that also means though that you can actually, now, I'm not an expert on this, so consult someone for your where you are. And Canada is definitely going to be different than the US when it comes to this kind of thing. But like I know that for me, I can actually report that, I pay a contractor X amount. It'll ask, do you give them a 1099? And I say no. And then, so there's some negotiation that happens there, but, I can actually claim a percentage of what I pay contractors on my US taxes, and it gives me a little bit of a tax break. Rules change all the time, year to year. You never know. Consult an attorney or consult an accountant or somebody. This is not legal or financial advice. All the standard disclaimers. But, you know,
Understood,
no, you are
understood.
not on the hook for their taxes. It's really what you asked me. And I went off on a tangent.
Well, I'm sure there are people listening to this who are like, oh God, all I want to do is write. I totally want to do this. But what do you say to the people who perhaps are from the self-publishing world who are like, I want to control my author business.
Yeah.
I want to own everything, do everything. Do you have any advice for them in terms of like letting go, like being willing to kind of let go of some work?
Start with you should do this anyway, but start with the smallest task you can think of that you are willing to just let go. Okay. And maybe that's something like, for some people, some of this stuff is they enjoy it as much. Some authors enjoy the marketing as much as the writing. In fact, I think there's a whole bunch of closet marketers out in the writing space who really just want to be marketers and they needed something to market. And so they started writing books. Some of these people are brilliant at it. They're much better at it than I am. But let's say that, maybe you decide I could hand off scheduling and posting social media because that's usually a pretty light duty kind of thing. And you might even think, well, that's not worth paying the, 750 an hour to do. And by the way, we do this in 10-hour increments, and you
Mm.
you you really want to start with 20 hours. And that's for the month, but some people might balk at that, the spending money to have someone do something so simple or whatever. But one of the reasons you would do that is it's a starting point for you to learn how to communicate with somebody, how they communicate, how you prefer to communicate. Like I hate email, so email is never going to be the way I communicate with somebody. We'll just start a Slack. I tried Notion, got overwhelmed with it. I'm like, I felt like I was working twice as hard once I got a VA because I didn't like using Notion or any of the things that we were using to communicate. So once I figured that out, I changed it. And so now I know, well, I'm going to do this via a Slack channel. I'm going to say, I'm going to leave you a message and you can respond whenever you're awake. You do not have to do this now. And so we figured each other out. I also figured out with my first VA, like, this isn't working with, this person isn't doing the work the way I need them to. And so I ended up, letting that person go and getting a new person to help me out. So it's good to kind of start that way. Start with some these small tasks, and then you just sort of slowly add some things. The big mistake that a lot of the authors coming in make is one, you don't necessarily have to pay somebody to start doing work for you if you're not already making money, you know. So make sure that you are in a place where you're ready and you need somebody. That's rule number one. But the thing that the big mistake that a lot of authors make in this is that they come in and try to hand everything off. And, I've gone paying somebody and I expect that they're going to do it exactly the way I would do it and even better and even more. And, they're a human being as well. So you need to kind of ramp up. Think about anytime you've ever had a day job. They didn't just throw you in and tell and give you the piles and piles of things that you eventually would learn to do. They basically onboarded you. So you need to learn how to onboard somebody to be a resource for your business. Here's a hint. You want this person to succeed and be happy working with you because that's going to help you make more money. And frankly, money isn't even the end all be all here. It'll also help you have a much better experience as a writer. It'll help you breathe easier and give you the opportunity to do less and get more out of it. That's the end game.
And I would argue, I've always said that I really feel like books are an older person's art form because I feel like at its core, in every single book, there's some kind of controlling idea that's sharing some wisdom about what it
Yeah,
is to be human. And I think part of having information to share with the world is being a leader. And
yeah,
I think having employees and having assistants is an opportunity to stretch those leadership muscles and say, the world doesn't end when I go away. What am I going to pass on beyond just my words? What
yeah,
wisdom and skill sets and wealth can I pass on to employees and to staff and partners and other people who are part of my world?
right. Plus, we we don't really think about it this way, but books are a way for you to actually make money while you are doing other things. Because once the book is published and out there earning, you're not doing that work anymore, and so you can go on and do something else. You can sleep, you can take a walk, you can go shopping, or you can write another book.
For
Well,
you, it's
this is
probably serving your community. For me, Coke and hookers. But to each author their
yeah,
own, right?
exactly.
It's
Well,
your choice what to do with that free time.
I like to get gin up and just go hang out on street corners, but the this is an extension of that. It is an extension of how do I have a presence beyond my immediate work, right? So once you kind of figure that out, so the books are sort of the product that you are creating, and then you have a workforce to help you promote that product so that you can create more product. And it's a self-perpetuating machine. So it's a good working philosophy to try to get into because once you have figured out, okay, if I do X, Y, and Z, it makes my life easier and I make more money, then you can replicate that formula. Like if you can figure out how to work with and manage a resource like a VA, you can hire a second VA to do additional things. There's nothing that says you can't have your sort of general admin assistant who helps you with day-to-day tasks, who can then oversee other VAs that you hire to do things like the marketing, or perhaps maybe you hire a VA whose entire job is to set up and keep your Shopify store going, or you have a VA whose whole job is to go out and try to get you on podcasts and media interviews and is sitting in front of cameras or whatever. You can build a team and you don't have to run that team all yourself. If you form a strong relationship with your primary VA, and then also create documentation for everything, by the way, something we didn't
SOPs is
discuss.
what it's all
Yes,
about.
SOPs. Once you kind of get into that rhythm, there's no limit to how much you can expand. And that's, you know, that's a relief. I mean, authors kind of need that help.
Well, Kevin, thank you so much
Of
for
course.
taking time out of your busy day to come on the podcast and share your experiences as an author, but also as a business person putting together this service to help out all those busy authors out there. Let's remind them again where they can go to find out more.
Okay, go to authoranchor.com and there's a big, I'm going to call it like an aqua colored button that says book a free discovery call. Do that, do the call, go in with those lists we talked about. And, there's never an obligation for anything. But I think that once you try it, you're going to find that this is something you've been waiting for.
Thanks so much for joining me on the Writing Coach podcast today, Kevin.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.